There are moments in life when laughter feels inappropriate, almost offensive, because the room is heavy with fear, uncertainty, or loss. Moments when smiling seems like betrayal and humor feels like denial. And yet, if you look closely at the darkest rooms humanity has ever entered, war zones, hospital corridors at 3 a.m., prison cells, refugee camps, bankruptcy courts, broken homes, you will often hear something unexpected echoing softly through the cracks. Not silence, not crying, but laughter. Quiet, sharp, sometimes bitter laughter. The kind that doesn't pretend things are okay, but dares to say, "This is unbearable, and I'm still here." Humor, strangely enough, does not show up when things are easy. It shows up when language fails, when logic collapses, when explanations fall apart. Humor steps in not to fix the situation, but to give us a way to breathe inside it. And that is why humor, real humor, not distraction or mockery, is one of the most serious tools we have for dealing with impossible situations. We are taught early that seriousness equals maturity, that responsibility wears a straight face, that pain should be met with solemn silence. We learn that when life becomes hard, we must become hard with it. No jokes, no lightness, no laughter. As if humor were a luxury reserved only for those who have nothing at stake. But this belief quietly robs us of something essential, because impossible situations are not solved by seriousness alone. You cannot outthink grief. You cannot logic your way out of fear. You cannot discipline your nervous system into calm when everything around you screams danger. When life corners you, financial collapse, illness, failure, betrayal, loss, your mind searches desperately for oxygen. And seriousness, while important, often suffocates. Think about the times when everything felt overwhelming, when the future was foggy and the present unbearable. You may not remember the advice people gave you. You may not remember the motivational quotes or rational explanations. But you probably remember the moment someone cracked a joke at the wrong time and somehow it worked. Not because it erased the pain, but because it made the pain survivable for one more breath. The problem is that we confuse humor with avoidance. We assume laughing means we are not taking life seriously. But humor is not denial. Humor is confrontation, just from a different angle. It looks directly at the absurdity of suffering and says, "I see you. You don't own me." In impossible situations, the enemy is not the problem itself. The enemy is hopelessness. And hopelessness thrives in silence, rigidity, and isolation. When people are stripped of control, they cling to meaning. When meaning is threatened, despair grows. And when despair grows unchecked, it turns into paralysis. This is why impossible situations feel so devastating, not because they are painful, but because they make us feel powerless. Humor restores a fragment of power. It allows us to reframe reality without lying to ourselves. It gives us permission to acknowledge the absurdity of our circumstances without collapsing under their weight. A joke does not say, "This doesn't matter." It says, "This matters so much that I refuse to let it destroy my inner world." In hospitals, nurses joke with patients who are terrified, not because the illness is funny, but because fear needs a release valve. In war, soldiers joke in trenches not because death is amusing, but because fear must be metabolized somehow. In poverty, families laugh at their empty fridge not because hunger is a joke, but because dignity must survive even when comfort does. And single quotes humor is how the human spirit says, "I may not control the situation, but I still control my response." And yet, many of us suppress humor precisely when we need it most. We feel guilty laughing during hard times. We feel irresponsible smiling when things are falling apart. We equate seriousness with strength, but strength is not the absence of laughter. Strength is the ability to laugh without losing awareness. The turning point comes when you realize this. Humor does not weaken your pain, it strengthens your endurance. At some point, every person who survives an impossible situation reaches a quiet realization. They stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "How do I stay human inside this?" That is where humor enters, not as entertainment, but as resistance. It becomes clear that laughter is not the opposite of seriousness. It is the companion of courage. It is the nervous system's way of resetting. The mind's way of saying, we are still thinking, still flexible, still alive. There is a moment, often subtle, when humor stops being accidental and becomes intentional. When you choose to see irony instead of injustice. When you choose to laugh at the unpredictability of life instead of demanding fairness from a universe that never promised it. That choice does not make you naive. It makes you resilient. The turning point is understanding that humor is not about making light of suffering. It is about refusing to let suffering erase your complexity as a human being. People who survive the impossible are rarely humorless. In fact, they often have the darkest, sharpest, most honest sense of humor because they have seen too much to pretend. Their laughter carries wisdom. It carries scars. It carries truth. Once you understand this, something changes. You stop policing your own laughter. You stop apologizing for moments of joy during hardship. You realize that humor is not disrespectful to pain, it is disrespectful to despair. You begin to see humor as a psychological survival skill, a way to create emotional distance without emotional numbness, a way to observe suffering without becoming consumed by it. This shift is powerful because it restores agency. Even when the situation remains impossible, your internal experience becomes negotiable. You regain movement where there was stagnation, flexibility where there was rigidity, breath where there was suffocation. Humor becomes a quiet rebellion against helplessness. So yes, humor is one of the most serious tools we have for dealing with impossible situations. Not because it fixes them, but because it keeps us intact while we endure them. It reminds us that even in the worst conditions, we are more than our suffering, that we are still capable of perspective, creativity, and connection, that we are not reduced to victims, statistics, or problems to be solved. Humor does not trivialize pain. It humanizes it, and in a world that often feels overwhelming, chaotic, and unfair, staying human may be the most serious responsibility of all. So the next time life corners you, when plans collapse, when answers disappear, when the situation feels impossible, don't ask yourself whether it's appropriate to laugh. Ask yourself this instead: what part of me needs to stay alive right now? If a moment of humor helps you breathe, take it. If laughter helps you endure one more day, allow it. If irony helps you see clearly instead of bitterly, embrace it, because humor is not escapism. It is survival with awareness. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do in an impossible situation is laugh and keep going.